All right. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We know your time is valuable, and we're honored that you're spending some of that time with us to learn more about PBA's Focus Care program. So for anyone that's not terribly familiar, what we're trying to do with Focus Care is create opportunity for savings above and beyond just network opportunities. I'll go into a little bit more depth, but today, could you go ahead and advance the slide, please? Here we go. Fostering outcome and creating unparalleled savings. So this is really where we're trying to take our Focus Care program, continually adding and updating different programs that are going to go beyond the network savings and bring opportunities to drive down the cost of health plans. Can you go ahead and move to, and you can see all the other ones there, but today we're going into the Golden Triangle RX. Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive with Byrd and Golden Triangle RX to learn more about specialty infusion drugs and how we can manage them better. Today we'll cover what we're doing now, how the process works, how we're evaluating every situation to get the right patients on the right path for the most effective treatment and cost management. Go ahead in the next slide. Okay, so I just wanted to, before we get started here, everyone is currently on mute. So you don't have to worry about putting your dog outside or locking up your kids. Today, we'll ask you to use the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put it into the Q&A. If you want your questions to be public, you can go ahead and use the chat. And if something's really complex or you want to get into a discussion, I can have Kevin go ahead and unmute you so that we can get into the conversation. But today, presenting Byrd. He's been with GTRx since 2015. He actually started out in sales for Golden Triangle RX and has worked his way to the COO. So congratulations for that growth that you've had personally. Is a graduate of Ole Miss. He is a fairly new daddy as well and a pickleball lover. So with that little bit of background, why don't you go ahead and share with us a little bit about what is Golden Triangle RX? What are you guys doing and how are we engaging with you to save our clients money?
Well, thank you, Jeff, for that introduction. It's an honor to be with all of you here today, and thank you for tuning in. GTRx is, as Jeff mentioned, Golden Triangle Specialty Pharmacy Program. And today I'll just be providing a general overview of GTRx, what the program is, and then also let you know what we're doing as part of PBA's Focus Care program. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, specialty pharmacy continues to be one of the top spend categories for health plans across the country. And we get referrals from all corners of the industry, from stop loss groups to underwriters to brokers. And a lot of times what we see is that groups are paying more than they have to for specialty pharmacy, specifically on the medical spend. And sometimes it could be difficult to tell what's a good deal, mainly because drug markups are masked as billed charges and kind of further disguised by PPO network discounts. And oftentimes in these cases, there are more cost-effective alternatives that are available. And our quick kind of one-sentence elevator pitch is that the goal of GTRx and the goal of our program through the Focus Care program is to implement the most cost-effective sources for specialty drugs on the medical spend as early as possible. And so the way we like to set the stage for this is to really highlight the two different areas of pharmacy, being the PBM and the medical spend. And what's the difference here from a claims perspective? What do you typically see on either side? PBM is mostly going to consist of your oral capsules, your self-injectables, your everyday kind of day-to-day pharmaceutical medications, and some specialty, but not as much of the specialty pharmacy that GTRx focuses on. The medical spend is where GTRx kind of targets its savings opportunities, mainly because you're going to see your infusions, your more intensive therapies, your outpatient facilities, inpatient facilities sometimes, where you're dealing with hospital systems and outpatient facilities where there's a buy and bill in place. And really our best definition for for this purpose is high cost, high complexity within that medical spend. And what's the contracting standard of each? AWP is typically what you find on the PBM side, and AWP is the average wholesale price. Whereas on the medical spend, you're typically going to see a percentage off of bill charges. So there's a significant price difference there and gap in price between those two standards. And what Golden Triangle does is try to bring PBM style pricing to the medical spend where you're traditionally seeing PPO network discounts. If we can jump to the next slide here, just looking at kind of a macro level of what drives costs up in the pharmaceutical world, the two big ones that jump out are patents and exclusivity. We hear a lot about that in the news. But the exclusivity is granted once the drug is approved by the FDA. So that's really the effective kind of term that we look at as far as what drives costs up, which essentially means that no applications for the drugs are approved for the same active ingredient during that exclusivity period. And the exclusivity period can vary depending on the type of approval that's given. But a good example of this that we like to give is the drug Avastin, which is given to treat multiple different cancers, but it lost its exclusivity in 2019. And since then, there's been a biosimilar introduced to the market called Mvasi, which is about a 13 to 15% difference in price. And so, although that is meaningful and it does have an impact on the market, a lot of times, biosimilars or a drug losing exclusivity doesn't necessarily mean it's the end all, be all, or the silver bullet to ending the cost of that therapy. Sometimes it just means that you have another drug to look out for. So, essentially, in the marketplace, we're seeing new drugs coming to market constantly. Old drugs losing their exclusivity. And then also the older drugs finding new indications are being prescribed more broadly. We're seeing a lot of that, especially in the cancer field lately. And we could certainly talk about pharmaceutical costs on a macro level, and exclusivity and patents are certainly major drivers of this. But again, specific to what we do at Golden Triangle and GTRx, the medical spend supply chain and specifically the buy and bill system are the most obvious cost drivers for J codes and specialty medications that fall under the medical spend. And to give sure.
Just to recap. So some of the big picture items, and I'm looking at some of the names that are on the screen, and I know a lot of you guys know this, but just making sure that everybody's up to speed. The drug companies are holding the patents. They're getting as much as they can out of their investment. The biosimilars are slightly impacting things, but not always. And they're moving these over to the injectables and the J code, so getting it out of the PBM and over to the medical side. And I think what's important to just point out here is this is not like a silver bullet solution for every scenario. And so think about that as Hai continues, in his explanation. This is where we find the opportunities and then are able to, number one, help the patient, but number two, get the appropriate payment amounts in play. So I'm sorry, go ahead. Hi.
Sorry, absolutely. And a great example of kind of this medical spend markup that we see is on the next slide. And this is a snippet from a claim from a major hospital system for the drug Ultomiris. The drug has been on the market since late 2020 and has continued to grow its presence since its introduction. The drug treats a blood condition that causes frequent, very tiny blood clots. And you can see it billed here on the snippet as J1303. That's the J code for a total of $326,191. And along with the other line items that you see here in this snippet, this is pretty standard practice for what we see as a typical infusion claim, whether that be a $2,500 infusion for Crohn's disease, or in this case a $300,000 or $400,000 infusion for a rare blood disorder that's extremely expensive. You're always going to see it billed in this fashion, where you have a J code with a significant charge, along with some smaller line items that make up the entire claim. This includes, your per diem, which is at the top, labs, clinicals and supplies, maybe saline, things like that. Anything that goes into the infusion, this is typically what you're going to see. And this is standard practice. And on its surface, this looked like a good deal to our clients. They were getting a 50% discount, and the plan was paying about $163,000. This is a case that we referred from a stop loss group that we work with. And Golden Triangle pricing for this is in the $60,000 to $75,000 range. So the story here is that discounts can be deceiving. And at the end of the day, this is a 172% markup based on Golden Triangle's pricing, which we anticipate to be, roughly what the hospitals are paying for the medication. So what appeared to be a great deal with a 50% discount, was actually not a very good deal, and was actually 172% markup. So it really comes down to a percentage off of what is really what we like to drive home here.
Yeah, I like that you point that out too, because again, some of the people on this call, they get it. This is where the hospitals are making their money. They're not making the money on doing the IV therapy for $950 or the clinical, piece of it. They're making all the money on the markup of this medication. And as you can see, based on the numbers that Hai is putting in front of you, this can be obtained for much less than the hospital's markup. And I think I'll go into it a little bit, but I just really want to point out that's not always the case. Transparency is becoming a much bigger conversation, and we're getting some visibility to things. And so sometimes the network discount is good. So we do look at that in this whole process, and I'll go into that in a little bit.
Right. That's one of the things we always provide our clients, and especially within the focus care program of how our operation works is we're checking to see, if there's a good deal in place, leave it alone. And some of the networks do produce, very competitive discounts that are right in line with what Golden Triangle's AWP minus pricing is. And so if you're at AWP minus on the medical spend, even within a few points of what Golden Triangle's rates are, we'd say, that's typically pretty fair. But I'd like to compare a recent experience I had in buying a car. I tried to compare that to this scenario and what we typically see at work with, drug markups to car markups, right? And if anyone on the call has purchased a car or knows somebody or has a family member that's purchased a car over the last 3 years since, the supply chain issues, car markups or market adjustments are pretty rampant. That's what they call them. And we bought a car. The manager came to us with a 20% markup on the car, and I looked at my wife, and we were able to talk them down a little bit, but we still ended up paying a markup. And I thought to myself, man, 20%. This is amateur hour compared to what we see in what we do with drug markups. I didn't tell him that. Obviously, I wanted to keep the prices as down as possible, but the main difference between those two examples is that, in the auto industry, it's temporary. We're kind of going through this, post-COVID, marketplace where there's, supply bubbles, and, there's 3 million cars that weren't produced during that time. And so we're going to have to do some, kind of growing pain to get out of that. But this has been going on in the healthcare world for decades, and it's the backbone of how hospitals and hospital systems, outpatient facilities make their money, is exactly like what you see here. And as long as this is the model, the buy and bill system, then there's going to be opportunities for health plans to utilize programs like Golden Triangle and steerage mechanisms within the focus care program to deliver more significant savings for their clients.
Hi, there's a question from Joe Peterson, and I don't want to pretend like I'm the expert that can answer it. And he's asking how much of the profit and the markup. So let's just say you got it for $63,000, and the discounted amount was that $163,000. How much of that profit goes to the hospital, that $100,000 difference, and how much of it goes to the manufacturer? My assumption is it all would go to the hospital, but I don't want to speak out of turn.
So Golden Triangle's pricing would be in the 60 to 75,000. Let's just call it 63, right? And we kind of operate under the assumption that the hospital would be buying the drug for about the same price, maybe a little bit less, since they're, maybe a major hospital system. Let's call it, 60,000. So yeah, I would think it's the entire profit of that 60,000 up to the 163,000, that $100,000 profit that goes directly to that hospital system. The profit for the manufacturer comes, underneath that 60,000, where you have wholesale acquisition costs and even lower pricing benchmarks that the big pharma operates on. What Accredo purchases Ultomiris from Eli Lilly or some of the big pharma companies is really kept secret. But at the AWP level, it's kind of where we operate, and that's in the 60 to 75,000 range.
Great. Now this is uncovering what's happening.
So jumping to the next slide, we have a kind of a brief list of what we typically see fall under the medical spend. And again, these are not your oral capsules or your self-injectables. A lot of these are more intensive infusions that need to be monitored by a healthcare professional, whether it be a doctor or a specialized nurse. So cancer is obviously a huge cost driver, and there's a lot of expensive specialty therapies that fall in that category. Just to name a few, Keytruda, Opdivo, Yervoy, Neulasta, Rituxan, and more all fall under that oncology category of kind of repeat drugs that we see marked up regularly. Multiple sclerosis is a huge one that we're trying to drive home to every group that we meet with, to be on the lookout for the drug Ocrevus. It's used to treat multiple sclerosis and given every 6 months. And patients seem to be very happy with the results of what they see through Ocrevus, since it's given every 6 months as compared to every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks with some of the competing therapies. And then some of your more rare conditions that fall under the miscellaneous diseases, such as Spinraza, which is a huge buzzword a few years ago, which is now kind of shifted into Zolgensma, which is a $2.1 million lumbar injection, so a spinal injection to treat muscular dystrophy for infants. We've worked a handful of those cases. So really there's just a revolving door of pain points here that fall just within this slide. And again, this isn't all encompassing, but this is a pretty good list of what you typically see fall under the medical spend as what GTRx considers, specialty pharmacy that we could impact.
So two things. One, Zolgensma. So there's that situation. Is there an alternate medication that they can go to? I mean, what's the direction? Because we do another thing with Cigna where we try to get people to buy this risk, and where Cigna will take the risk on those big specialty drugs, and that's one of the ones that's covered under that program. But what are the other alternatives that might exist within the GTRx realm to help with those expenses?
We can bring a price point to the table, which for Zolgensma specifically, I feel like isn't enough. You need more than just a price point to impact a Zolgensma case, more of a centers of excellence model. So it takes more of a hands-on approach with cases like that, because there's only a handful of locations across the country that are qualified to do the infusion.
Okay.
So we've been a part of that, but it's just a little bit more hands-on than your standard infusion case that we would typically see.
Great. And I'd like to point out to everyone who's watching us today, PBA has about 100 employees, and we've got about 75 employees that have coverage on the plan. And just in the list of the dozen or so conditions that you see on the screen, over the last 2 years, we've had 4 of these conditions with our own population. So the opportunity is much bigger than it might appear on the surface, even for a small group, to have a lot of these conditions, and really opportunities for savings.
That's exactly right. So kind of jumping into the next slide to get into how we operate and what GTRx is. We're a national network of specialty pharmacies. So in 2017 is when GTRx was launched, and prior to that, we were simply reaching out on a case-by-case basis and trying to improve upon discounts that were already in place through single patient agreements and letters of agreement. We knew that we wanted to broaden the program to be able to impact one, a broader population, and two, be more effective, and to be able to implement it plan wide. So that's when GTRx was launched in 2017, and essentially it's a program with a three-pronged approach. The first being site of care. So we're going to be looking to see, can the drug that's being given or is about to be given at home, and is the patient in agreement with that? Is their doctor willing to sign off on that? Is the patient suited for that? Are they a candidate for home infusions? We help communicate a lot of that information back and forth, and make sure that transition goes smoothly. Second being preferred sourcing, which is kind of more commonly known as white bagging in the marketplace. So we have the ability to ship medications nationwide directly to the patient's current provider, so there would not be any change of care that would be needed on that approach, simply a change in the source of the same medication to one of our pharmacies. And the third is the approach that we started taking kind of in the pharmacy arena, which would be direct negotiations, which we've become a lot more effective at with our contracts, because we do have access to over 800 different specialty medications, all at great pricing. So we have a good idea through multiple pharmacies of kind of where the market averages fall for a lot of these medications.
So really, that's like a shopping opportunity that someone may not see because they happen to go to that doctor in their area for that condition. They're not having that opportunity to shop, where getting Golden Triangle plugged in can actually do that shopping and ship it in from wherever they can find it at the best price.
Right, and we're not we're independently owned. We're a small family business, so we're not in any way financially tied to the pharmacies that we're contracted with. So we're bringing different price points to the table, different pharmacies, and some have different strengths in different areas. So we're a true marketplace in terms of specialty pharmacy. Kind of jumping to the next slide, to talk about our process with PBA, there is a large component of it that works with pre-certification and prior authorizations and medical necessity, and working in close collaboration with case management to make sure that these solutions are put in place as early as possible. And there's also a weekly claims analysis portion of it that comes into play. So kind of having that both proactive and reactive measures, I think what makes Golden Triangle a little bit different, and I think most effective. But at the end of the day, Golden Triangle can deliver up to 60% savings compared to traditional PPO networks. And again, that falls in that difference between those pricing benchmarks that I mentioned earlier, between what you typically see as, let's say, a 50% off of bill charges discount, compared to, let's say, AWP minus 25% on that drug Ultomiris, which I'm not sure what our rate is exactly, but that's where the savings come from, is the difference in pricing benchmarks that exist between the medical spend and PBM. Another piece that I failed to mention that I wanted to start here is it's financial assistance. And Jeff had mentioned that we have a large focus on the patient's experience in all this, and we make sure that any financial assistance program that is available to the patients is put in place and maintained through any transition that takes place through GTRx.
Thanks for highlighting that, Hi. So just to kind of recap for everyone listening, there are multiple ways of approaching this. Worst case scenario, we're seeing it show up on a claim cycle, where the claim is getting brought into play. But we're always looking at the pre-claims that might be leading to that medication with the data analytics that I was mentioning, as well as the pre-certification. So what's in case management already? What has a condition that might lead to one of these medications, and how can we stay in front of it so that we're not, I'll just say, eating that first claim before, getting the medication sourcing switched over to, one of the Golden Triangle's preferred locations.
our kind of final slide before we jump into the quick cases is just a chart of kind of what the operation looks like at GTRx and working with the focused care program or within the focused care program. Medical claims analysis is a big part of it. And once an opportunity is identified, we're actively working with case management to implement the solution. And then GTRx is implemented. And then the final point at the lower left is continued management and scheduling of the shipments, because almost all of these conditions are chronic, and you're going to be seeing regular treatments, sometimes every 2 weeks, every 3 months, every 6 months. It just depends on the condition and the medication, but very rarely is it a one and done infusion when it comes to specialty pharmacy. So most of what we do, or not, a huge part of what we do at Golden Triangle is maintaining the solutions that we're putting in place to ensure that medications get to where they need to be when they need to be, and working through any logistical changes that have happened. Maybe patients moved. We've worked with some college students that are at home over the summer, and so we got to make sure we kind of have all of our T's crossed and I's dotted with logistics and getting things where they need to be when they need to be.
So much of the attendees today are advisors, consultants, brokers that are working with our clients and even prospective clients. And don't minimize the role that you play in this as well, because even though we've identified, we're looking at claims, we're looking at pre-certs, we're looking at all these things, there are conversations that happen with you and your client that can give us a heads up that we might not otherwise see. So that's where we really like the partnerships that we've developed with our consultants and with our clients, so that we can get ahead of this from every angle possible. So, I love the slide you put together here and how this whole thing works. And hopefully this helps our audience to see what, the steps look like. And again, we may get to many of these and say, well, what's the network discount? What's the discounted network rate? We've walked away from many of these and said, this is the best deal. So we're not disrupting just for disruption's sake. We're doing the best thing for the client and the patient.
Very, very well said. And we have to kind of close out. We do have 4 quick case studies that we put together just to show some further examples of the very large case study that we showed in the earlier slide. But these are just everyday cases. This is what we see on a regular basis from some of the groups that reach out to us. Case study 1 is a Stellara case. It's used to treat psoriasis or UC. The plan was previously paying over $41,000, and Golden Triangle's cost is right at just shy of $25,000. So the final bullet here that you'll see throughout all 4 of these, and there's 2 more on the next slide, is that preferred sourcing / home care. We highlight that because each of these medications has the ability to be given at home, which is a great, I think, leverage point for us when we're trying to put solutions like this in place, and when we're trying to work with outpatient facilities and patients. A lot of times they're excited to get the infusion at home. It's a lot more convenient for them. The more options, the better. And each of these medications can be shipped directly to an outpatient facility or given at home. The second one is the drug Ocrevus, which I mentioned, is the multiple sclerosis medication that we try to drive home with our clients. That's just rampant. It's everywhere, and the markups are extremely egregious. The plan was previously paying $110,000 every 6 months, and Golden Triangle's cost is right at $34,000. So again, this could be given at home. This is more of a recent development that they could be given at home within the last 18 months or so. So we're really excited about that added capability through our pharmacy partners and GTRx. This is not the record, however, of the markup I've seen on multiple sclerosis. We just recently saw one that was paid at $142,000 for the same dose. So
wow,
it just depends. Jeff, you and I were talking yesterday about it just depending on which hospital system or which provider you're going to be looking at, the price can vary exponentially. It could truly be staggering what the price difference is from different providers. So we see it all at Golden Triangle and the inquiries that we receive.
All right. Don't have any questions in the queue yet, but I do have a couple that I've prepared. So what are you seeing as some of the biggest pushback? Number one, from providers, or number two, from patients?
Definitely providers is what we deal with mostly at Golden Triangle. The white bagging is definitely kind of a hot topic issue that has been in the public conversation recently. There's been multiple states that have put in place measures or proposed measures to restrict white bagging or put some form of limitation on programs that do white bagging, and a lot of that is driven by the provider lobbies and the provider systems out there. That a lot of the pushback is financially motivated. So we've had calls where they'll tell us that they won't allow the drug to be shipped in, and they'll be completely honest with us and tell us that it's due to it affecting their bottom line. So I don't really put a lot of merit to the additional pushback that they give as far as logistical challenges. I think if an effective team is managing the shipments, then it goes very smoothly. I mean, we haven't had any issues, and we've been doing this since 2017.
So have you ever changed site of care just to be able to get that, or potentially who's providing the care in order to get that ability to? Because I mean, we're talking about 20, in that one extreme circumstance, $100,000 difference.
Right. So that's definitely where we're going to look to first. Is can we give this at home? Is a site of care change possible, and is it appropriate? So that's where we're going to look to first. Where we find the most difficulty is in the cancer arena. So a lot of those medications cannot be given at home. Your Keytrudas, your Opdivos, Yervoys. You're forced to work with the provider at some level. So we're going to be trying to either have the drug shipped in or negotiate with that hospital system. And it can be challenging. We are very effective at it. We have an approach that we have through the Focus Care program that's very effective in that effort. But as Jeff, you mentioned, this is not a silver bullet. This is just an effective, lever that you should be utilizing within your plan to achieve the most savings possible.
Well, thanks, for a little bit of those details. Hopefully that helps our audience. Last question I have: how do you get paid?
We are a percentage of savings. So our Golden Triangle's fee is 25% of savings, which we don't get paid unless we're impacting a case. But we're always in the background scanning for opportunities through the Focus Care program and through PBA's team to see, are there opportunities to implement more cost-effective solutions for these medications. So we are a percentage of savings.
And so highlighting that is one of the key features of any partner that we have that is part of our Focus Care program, is we're keeping our clients out of the risk pool of paying a per employee per month for a service. So when we bring value, then these guys are doing the work, and that's where we're making sure they get paid, as opposed to, in case you ever happen to have a thing, it falls in there. So I mentioned earlier the Cigna program for those very, very, very expensive drugs. That is a per employee per month. So that is a risk pool. So we're not able to do that sort of a scenario with Cigna in the Focus Care program, but I just wanted to draw that difference between the programs. All right. I don't see any other questions. Oh, there's one. All right. Is the fee on every fill or the initial negotiations?
It is every fill. So it's on a percentage of savings per claim basis.
Okay. Thank you. All right. We have. That's it. All right, so we are going to make this video live. It should be ready to go definitely by the end of this week. And so we'll post it on our social medias, and I'm sure that that any sales reps that you're dealing with will be more than happy to follow up with you on it. So, and reach out to me at any time if you've got a question about how these programs work and what other programs we're considering and working on building into this program. But this is, from my perspective, we're never finished building this, because you can never finish the way that the hospitals and the different providers are billing for their services. So it's the cat and mouse game that we're going to be playing until the end of time. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Hi.
Of course. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody, for joining.